Hey everyone, on this Testimony Tuesday, we have another powerful testimony lined up. And it's from one of my friends who was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. He was involved with drugs and gang violence and even the hip hop scene. But in his 20s, he gave his heart to the Lord and has been ministering from the East to the West Coast ever since. So stay tuned as you listen to this powerful testimony.
The Cutting Edge.
Hey everyone, Martin Navarre Jr. here once again with The Cutting Edge, and our mission is to inspire you to study, understand, and apply God's Word into your life. On this channel, we cover practical Bible topics, have powerful testimonies, and we seek to answer your questions that you may have about the Bible. So if you're new here, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified of upcoming videos. And if you're blessed by this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with others so that they too can be blessed. And if you have any comments, questions, prayer requests, or if you just want to drop by and say hi, go ahead and put that in the comment section below. Well, let's get on with our testimony. All right, hey everyone, I'm here with a very special guest of mine. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about your background, where you're born and raised.
Dig it. So, hey, how you doing? Cutting Edge. This is Pastor Marquis Johns. I currently serve as the Director for Adventist Community Services of the Southeastern California Conference, as well as the Conference Evangelist for the Black Ministries Department. Now, I have a couple of other hats that I wear, but those are my primary jobs on a day-to-day basis. I'm originally from South Central Los Angeles, California, born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, California, and the Lord brought me a mighty long way. Don't get it chopped, don't get it twisted, don't get it confused. I am from the streets of South Central, but God had other plans in mind for me when he formed me in my mother's belly. And by his grace and hopefully I am doing now what I believe he intended for me when he saw me before I was.
Amen, man. So you were born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. Tell us a little bit about how it was growing up there at the time.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in that era that they made movies about. I grew up in the Boys in the Hood era. I grew up in the era of how to minister society, like those things. I grew up at the height of gang culture. Gang banged myself. I grew up around the corner from where they actually shot Colors, which was a very seminal work as it concerns bringing the LA gang culture to Hollywood and inevitably to the United States of America so that you could see the inner workings of what constituted gang culture. And so I grew up in that era, the 1980s, when crack no longer was a blossoming drug problem, but was a full-blown epidemic in South Central. I grew up in the time of the crash units, the underclothes cops who were the gang unit tasked with stamping out gangs across South Central Los Angeles, California. So growing up in that time, being on welfare, living in the inner city, growing up in that time, everything you saw in the movies was what I was experiencing. And that's not an overreach. That's not to sensationalize the life that God called me out of, but that was my day-to-day reality. As a matter of fact, I'm the oldest of my mother's three sons. The son, who is 2 years younger than me, spent the majority of his adult life in prison. My little brother, who was 9 years younger than I am, was actually killed in gang violence. And so that is literally my life, my background, my testimony, and what it was like for me growing up in South Central from 1980 to about 1991. Immersed in gang culture, immersed in everything that was made popular through the music of the likes of NWA, Ice Cube, Ice-T, and so on. And so that is my background. That's where I came from. And literally what you see in some of those movies, or what you saw in some of those movies, was what we were experiencing on a day-to-day basis during that time frame.
Wow, man. So it sounds like you have been through a lot growing up there. Basically lived the movie out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now,
Let me be honest. Like, there are aspects of it that, there are levels, right? And I wasn't a drug kingpin. I wasn't a gang leader. I was, however, very much a part of what was going on in South Central contributed to who I am today. And so I did my jail time, I sold my drugs, I gang banged, but never on a level to where I was afraid of the RICO. You know what I'm saying? You get people oftentimes who want to tell their story and make it a grandiose thing, and take the little things they did and expand and explode them to be something much greater. But I'm going to keep it a stack with you. You know, I sold my little drugs, I did my little gang banging, ultimately transitioned into the world of hip hop. But I don't want nobody walking away like, yo, Marquis was a drug kingpin and a game lord. No, not at all.
Yeah. Now we're gonna get to that transition to hip hop, but let me ask you this: growing up, did you have a Christian influence? Did you go to church? Was there any influence in your household? Growing up there in LA.
Dope question. Dope question. So like most families in the era that I came from, particularly African American families who lived in urban centers in the particular city, whether, you know, we talk about Chicago, we talk about Bed-Stuy, we talk about Detroit or South Central or Baltimore at the time. Like a typical family, you know, it was a fractured, it was a frayed family to where my mother and father were not married. And so I grew up in a home where I grew up in a time where, because of the crack epidemic, you would go back and forth between the parents, because depending on who was struggling with drugs, you went to the one who wasn't at the time. And when they started struggling, they shipped you back to the other. But what happened with me during that time was I had to live with my grandmother, my dad's mom, several times in my life overall. And she at one point was married to a Baptist minister. And so whenever we were with her, church was something we did. I like to tell people we were CEO Christians, Christian Easter only. But there was a time, there was a span where, you know, we were in choirs, you know, going to a Baptist church, Rock of Faith Baptist Church in South Central Los Angeles, California. I was in the choir. I went to Sunday school, but there was nothing like how I think I am in the very fabric of Christianity now, irrespective of denomination. My friend group, the people I relate to, the people that I talk to, and the people that I'm around are all somehow, some way, shape, form, or fashion very involved in church, irrespective of what denomination or belief system they subscribe to. And so I did grow up exposed to Christ and exposed to church, but I wasn't as steeped in it or saturated in it as I see young people who are in Seventh-day Adventism now. Even though sometimes we think that they're not doing Christianity or Adventism the way we want them or we think they should, they're growing up going to Christian academies, being in choirs, going to Christian schools, whether they're a Christian HBCU or an Adventist college like PUC or La Sierra. They're growing up basically immersed in a Christian culture. That was not and is not my testimony, but I wasn't completely unaware of the existence of the church and or Christ.
Okay, so yeah, so you were familiar,
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely. So you did have some.
Another thing, Pastor Navarro, is that
Uh-huh.
I always love to read, and loving
Okay.
to read also
Mm,
exposed me to other things. You know what I mean?
okay.
So there was a time in my life where I actually sought Christ out. So you know, I was growing up in rolling 60s hood, right? And there was a little storefront church that started down the street from my house. There would be some times on Sunday I'd get up and just roll. There was a Pentecostal church. I'd roll down there and just go to church. Just I don't even know why. I was just doing it. I mean, hindsight being 2020, I look back over my life and see how God's hand was leading me to where I've eventually landed. But yeah, I grew up around church, knew of Christ's existence, but he wasn't as much a part of my life as he is now, or as much a part of my life as I see some people, some young people who are 14, 15, 16, and in their 20s, how much a part of their life he is. That wasn't my testimony.
Got you, got you. So man, so okay, growing up in gang culture, growing up around South Central Los Angeles, had some familiarity with the church and with Christ, but then you talked about a transition to hip hop. Tell us a little bit more about that in your life.
Yeah, dig it. So hip hop was huge. I mean, like growing up in, you gotta think 79, 80s, early 80s, hip hop was a babe, but it was already beginning to influence culture in a very tangible way. And of course, that thing swept everybody up. And so it allowed us to participate in in a form of escapism, to where even though, like, so for me, how it manifested itself in my life, I grew up in South Central. Again, gangs, crack is all around me. And New York hip hop became an escape for me because there was this presentation of hip hop that was uh, in stark contrast to what I was seeing from hip hop. Hip hop in LA at the time reflected gang culture and drug dealing, whereas the East Coast hip hop was more intellectually stimulating, was being presented more as a cultural, an alternative to what we saw as slave culture. And so there was a dress, there was a food, there was a language, there was all of these things that constituted an entire culture that captivated me. So while I was growing up on the West Coast, listening to people like Scott LaRock and King T, and I mean, excuse me, not Scott LaRock, but King T, and I'm trying to remember some of the old school, a world class wrecking crew. They were putting out stuff that was intellectually stimulating, that challenged you, and also presented an entire cultural alternative to the gang culture. So whereas out here on the West Coast, we're wearing Dickies and Nike Cortez. They're in like Polo and Guess and Timberlands. And I was like, I really gravitated toward that and to that. And so that began to inform my expression of hip hop. But hip hop was a way for me to escape everything that was going on in my life. And so as early as when I was like in the fourth grade, I started trying to rhyme, I started trying to rap. And when I started trying to rhyme and rap, I started trying to rhyme and rap like East Coast guys, not necessarily like West Coast cats. The metaphors, the similes, you know what I mean? Like, you know, not the Zap Roger beats, but the dope underground, grimy New York Brooklyn style. That was what really I gravitated to. And more so because it provided an escape for me than because I felt like it was the better cultural expression of hip hop.
Mm-hmm. Man, so you said you started off fourth grade. Was that the first time you wrote your rhyme in fourth grade?
I do. I sat at I sat at the at my breakfast table, and just, you know, everybody started off the same way, A B C 1 2 3. You know what I mean? And so I do. But I also remember there was this album, there was this record, man, when I was probably in like fifth grade. So I would, you know, dabbled around trying to write some raps. But when I was about fifth or sixth grade, I came across this record called Super Rhymes, and I memorized that thing. And because it was the East Coast record, a lot of cats hadn't heard it on the West Coast. So originally I started off like what we would call nowadays as a biter. You know what I mean? So I memorized that thing. I memorized it front and back and forward, and I could spit different parts of it. And people thought that I was, you know, I wrote this rap. And that's what kind of made me kind of hone my skill a little bit more, because I was like, I can't be spitting super rhyme stuff and sounding dope, but then trying to spit A, B, C, and 1 2 3, in the hat and the mat and the sack. So that made me kind of step up my game in terms of how I was my rap style, if you will. But yeah, man, I remember sitting at my breakfast table and pinning out, trying to etch out those first bars, man.
Man, so now tell me, because I know that you got really deep into it,
Yeah.
right? You started at fourth grade, but you started getting better, started, you know, honing down your skills. So what escalated from there, from that point, man, you know, to get deeper into hip hop like you were?
So everything it's a strange convergence of things, right? So again, being immersed in gang culture, being the child of, you know, people struggling with drug addictions, crying out, looking for attention from somewhere, from someone, whether it was me going to church or me trying to, you know, do well in school or not do well in school because I thought that might get the attention of my parents or whomever else I was crying out to for attention. The thing was, to keep it a stack, man, you spitting bars at the lunchroom, you know what I mean? People like, oh, that's the guy. He's the one who can rap. Because at the time, like, rap wasn't it wasn't the cultural phenomenon it is now, but it was still something that if you did, it got you the extra attention, the extra nod, the extra look. You know, okay, he's the rap guy, right? And so it was really because it got me attention. It got people to notice me. It got people to see somebody that was like, you know, when you growing up, and I'm gonna keep it a stack on your interview, so you might have to edit this out. But when you grow up and people know your mom in the community for being the neighborhood crackhead, you want to be somebody other than that, and so people were able to see me as an individual, not as the extension of my mother's behavior, and that was what made me gravitate to and even want to get better. And so, we in school, man, we're battling. I ain't losing no battles. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna get famous for losing battles. I'm gonna get famous for winning them joints. And so that really became, again, a way to get attention, a way to escape. Like I said earlier, a way to escape what my reality was. In that moment when I'm battling and people are like cheering me on and people like me, that was preferable to what was going on at my house, because my house was the drug spot. My mom, we lived in a dope spot. You know what I mean? So it was that made me kind of lean really into that and hone that skill, harness my craft, and try and get better and better and better, because the better I got, the more attention I got. And that's just keeping it above.
So how good did you get?
Say that again.
How good did you get?
Oh man, we got dope, man.
Tell the people, man. Tell the people what transpired from that, that inspiration of
So of course,
hip-hop.
I ended up getting a publishing deal because I did some writing for some artists. Ended up getting a publishing deal with Interscope. Eventually got a record deal. Dropped a single. Was the first rapper to cross market and promote hip hop music and video games. At the time, you would hear some songs being used to promote games, but I helped shape the entire soundtrack, if you will, to Knockout Kings 2000. Dropped the video. Did some songs with, at the time, Bone Thugs and Harmony was pretty big. Did a song with Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony. Did a couple of songs with them. Was on a couple of soundtracks. Got my first gold record for some writing contributions I made to a song that was in a Martin Lawrence movie. Like, debuted #7 on Billboard with my own single. Like really, really, yeah, we did it. I was on Rhapsody, the basement. A dream of mine was to go into the basement and kick some bars. We got in the basement and kicked some bars there. I was on MTV. I was flown out to participate in the grand opening of the ESPN Zone in Manhattan. Like, yeah, the Lord, he did it, man. He did it.
And I remember because when we first met, you said Knockout Kings 2000, and I remember the song because I don't want to admit I really like that song. Okay, I didn't want to admit it to you in your face when we met, but I remember before I met you, I was like, ugh, this is a tight song. Knockout Kings. I was knocking people out and singing the song at the same time. But yeah. But man, so you got pretty far in hip hop. Now, what happened though? How come you didn't go even further? Tell the people what happened.
So, hindsight again being 2020, we say, well, that wasn't the Lord's plan for my life, but ultimately it's a cutthroat industry, man. And it is, you strive to offer your creative expression or your voice to this choir, not knowing how the powers that be will try to shape that voice. And my personality, again, because ultimately it was about attention for me. And so as people were critiquing my offerings, I felt that was a critique of me personally, and I didn't handle it well. That's one, to be completely honest. The other thing is, it's just a cutthroat industry, man. I mean, you got to bubble, and you got to bubble fast, or else. And so we did some stuff, but I wasn't. You said you liked it. I wasn't necessarily happy with that song. That wasn't for me the truest expression of who I wanted to be as an artist.
I remember you telling me that.
I let my company know. I became that cat who was like mad at the record label. Record label was mad at me. They shelved me. And I started doing some stuff on my own for a while just to keep my name relevant. But another thing that happened was some cats that I was cool with, who were bubbling around the same time I was bubbling, started blowing up while I'm on the bench. And man, that thing was devastating. It sent me into a depression. You know what I mean? And so while I believe that while I was in that state of flux where I was struggling with feeling like what I had put a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears into for a number of years was not giving me the payoff that I anticipated it would. And specifically, that I saw some others who were starting off at the same time as I was starting off, who I was familiar with and had conversations with and hung out with. It just really impacted me in a very negative way. And I think that was the fertile ground that God could plant the seed that produced what's in front of y'all now. I think had I not hit that rock bottom, if you will, it would have been harder. I mean, God can do anything. He's omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, but it would have been very, very hard for me to get to this point where I am now, working in this capacity as a minister of the gospel, if I had been able to achieve what I wanted. The Bible says there's a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof, and I think that the end that I was going to heap onto myself was not going to be what God really wanted for me. So there is, I believe, the hidden hand of God always moving behind the scenes. But then I have to admit that there were some things about me personally that I hadn't really worked out that contributed to my demise, which, again, you fall back on, theologically, there's the concept of God's ultimate will, original will, and permissive will. I want to get into all of that, but nonetheless, it was all of that led me to go, all right, I need something else. And right at that moment, God was like, yo, I got something for you. You know what I mean? And so that I don't, that kind of is the full scope of knowing that God has a plan for us, and how that plan plays out, that you unwittingly participate in, thinking that you're doing something else or you're doing something. I'm mad at my record label, and God is like, of course you're mad at the record label because I have something else for you. You know what I mean?
Mm. So things weren't necessarily going the way that you had wanted it, right? The way
Exactly.
that you planned. So
Exactly.
then, and you're saying that, yeah, God had another plan. So what was that plan? The transition in your life now? What took place then?
So the crazy thing is, and the story, which is why you're kind of guiding it. So I was in between record deals, right, and still kind of like, yo, I'm gonna do this because I'm dope, I'm nice, and Cats then told me I'm nice. Cats then told me I'm gonna be the future of the West Coast, and so I was trying to get into fighting shape, if you will. So I was going running a lot, and at the local park. I lived in North Hollywood at the time. So I was going running a lot, and I ran into an old friend of mine, and she began to, her and I talking, we're relating. Again, I ain't Christian or anything at the time, and we're relating, and I'm talking to her in a way that she's like, I know who you are. This is not who you are. You're the guy who walks around with a Bible, because no matter what was going on in my life, I fell in love with comparative religion. And because I did grow up, like we said earlier, around the church, the Bible was still my religious book of choice, even though I had read and been exposed to other offerings, religious offerings. And so she's like, this ain't who you are. You're the guy who walk around with a Bible. Ooh, and so she's like dropping it on me. And in this whole span of my movement from one place to the next, a friend of mine had pegged me, if you will, and told me, hey, the Lord got something for you. So there was a story, I'm going running. I run into a friend of mine, and she tells me, hey, I know who you are, the Lord, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whatever. But a few years earlier, that other friend of mine, a male friend of mine who had become Christian and got converted to Adventism, reached out to me and said the Lord had spoke to him about me. And I was like, yeah, no. So when, full circle, we come back around, I run into my homegirl, and she's talking to me about, yo, God got a plan for you. And I'm like, this again. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I went to my house, and I had this book on my bookshelf from my friend a few years earlier. The book was called America in Prophecy. So I'm looking at my bookshelf because, like I said earlier, without going into great detail, I was big into comparative religion as a hobby. So I'm looking at my bookshelf. I'm like, what is she talking about? She gave me this book. The book she gave me sounds a little weird, a little new agey. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling that. But I look on my bookshelf, and there's this book called American Prophecy. So I rip it out, pull it out. And now, for some reason, I'm more tuned in. I'm more locked into what's being said. So I called up my friend who had given me that book a few years earlier. And I was like, yo, man, the Lord, I feel like I needed to reach out to you. I mean, he hit the roof. Man, the Lord told me that you're gonna be a pastor. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. You're gonna do this. And I'm like, slow down. Whoa, 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 whoa. I just want to come to a Bible study. And he was like, no, 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 come to a Bible study. But I'm telling you, the Lord had told me a long time ago, you gonna be da 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 da. And I'm like, look, man, let me tell you something. I ain't never wearing no suit. I ain't never singing no hymns. I ain't never cutting my hair. At the time I had very long hair. And I'm always smoke weed. And he was like, ha 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 ha, yeah, you just come to Bible study. And so I started going to Bible study, man. And I mean, that was it. That was it. I was hooked. I was hooked on that version of the Advent message at that season of my life, man, was just what I felt like I needed, and what I feel like God knew I needed in that season of my life. And so that was it. After that, man, it was no looking back. Not that I was like fully in harmony with I was going to be a pastor, but I knew that I had found what I felt like God had planned for me. And yeah, man, it was crazy.
Man, so this friend, so he introduced you to this book. You guys had Bible studies, right? So what was the thing though that kept you? What was the thing that compelled you to continue on, getting to know more about the word, getting to know more about God? What was the thing?
So for me, I've always been a fairly good student. I was gifted and talented. All of that stuff, in school. But I've always loved history. And man, I could, when I was younger, I read the dictionary, I read encyclopedias. And so when I'm learning the Advent message and to see it line up with history the way it did, I knew the historical facts, but not the biblical, um, how it corresponded, if you will, with the Bible. So if we're going through something and we call out, a particular war or a particular happening in history, I had a reference point for that. And now I'm seeing it in scripture. So it was learning those things that really kept me, because again, Adventism was a very, and can be a very intellectually stimulating message, which is its gift and its curse.
Yep.
Right. And so, man, I was just blown away by this stuff that I learned in history, that I loved about history. You take the Great Controversy. One of my favorite books of all time is 1984 by George Orwell. Now you take Great Controversy and you like, all right, so she basically did the same thing almost, 60 years earlier. Yo, this is crazy, right? So it was leaning into that, and really that was what it was, man. And then when I finally decided to give my life to Christ, I was always in service. Not, and nowadays we leadership is a big deal, but I was in leadership, but I was always serving. I was always knocking on doors. I was doing Sabbath school. I was teaching Sabbath school. I was like my early pastor, my first pastor pegged me for leadership, and leadership in service. So I was always doing something. I never was a person who I didn't start doing coming to church and going home until I became a pastor. Up to that point, my whole life, and that's where you and I met, doing Bible work, going out into the community, knocking on doors, making it happen, man. That is also what kept me. So it was how intellectually stimulating the message was. It was how it corresponded with history, but it was also I actively participated in service from the moment I became, until this day. It may not look the way it did then, but I many times have wanted to walk away from denominational employment and from the denomination in its entirety, but I've been serving this whole time. And so those are the things that really have kept me and kept me here, is serving, and then being able to see God's hand move in service and in meeting the needs of people, mingling with people, desiring their good, etc. That is what kept me.
I like that, man. That's a very important point that you pointed out, is when you give your heart to Christ, because so many people nowadays, right, they get baptized and then they get lost in the
Yeah,
shuffle, you
yeah,
know. But
yeah,
I like that you pointed the fact that what kept you was to be, was being a servant for God, was doing
yeah,
the
man.
work, was
Yeah.
staying busy, So, and one more thing, how old were you when you gave your life to Christ in that point in time? Do you
So
remember?
it was 2002. So I was in my mid to late 20s.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So okay, so then after that, you gave your heart to God, started being active for Him in that local church that you're at, right?
hmm
So
hmm
then, tell us a little bit more about what happened after that. You know, did you go straight into ministry, or were you just doing stuff locally?
So I was doing stuff locally, but a young lady who I had brought into the church as, like, I don't say like a sister, my sister. She had gotten exposed to a ministry, and she was very impressed with that ministry. And through a series of events, she reached back out to me because she stopped going to the church that I was going to, and she reached out to me and she was like, again, here's another person saying what the Lord told them about me. Like, look, the Lord told me that you should go to this training that they do. And so I was like, I kind of had to test the waters, had to lay out a fleece. The Lord showed himself faithful in that move. And so once I accepted that, then I went to a place where for 4 months I was trained to do evangelism, to do outreach, to do what we call Bible work, or what is historically been referred to as missionary work in urban settings or wherever there's going to be an evangelistic effort. So from my local church, where I was heavily involved, and the Lord began to use me to preach and to teach and to share my testimony, I then went to an organization where I was trained, certified to do Bible work. And from there, uh, ended up going out to work leaving the West Coast, going to work on the East Coast, uh, through that organization.
But yeah, through the through the organization. That's when you met me, man. You didn't say. No,
I mean,
okay.
well, and that's where, so through that organization, I met Pastor Navarro of the Cutting
Oh
Edge
man.
TV, brilliant vessel of the Lord. But yeah, at that organization, I actually met some people who really, I've maintained my relationship and friendship with even into this day, uh, including you. We affectionately refer to one another as cousin, and so that's where I met you at that organization. We were both kind of trained to do this, what we call Bible work, but what is really missionary work. And yeah, man, and that was the midway point from where I was to where I am now.
Yeah, you even sold me into going with you to the East Coast. I think you forgot about that.
I didn't.
Um,
I didn't.
and-
I'm just walking along. I didn't. I begged you. You know what I'm saying? Please, cousin, please. Because again, and this is,
you sure
you and I
did.
were talking about this offline, off camera. Like, um, we have a mutual friend. There were a few of us who really grew tight at that organization during those 4 months. And to us, you were like the best Bible worker we had ever seen. You know what I mean? The way you were organized with it. I think what I brought to the table was I was already schooled in the orthodoxy of the right wing aspect of our denomination. But what you brought was a practical application. And everybody around us was like, yo, you're like, I think there was a time when they were trying to figure out at the organization who was going to be a new evangelist that they were going to put in rotation. And I think the three choices were me, you, and one other guy, because that's just how dope you were. So I was like, going out onto the East Coast to do work, I wanted the best to go with me. You know what I mean? And we had developed a very good relationship at the time, very good relationship. And I think that for me made it easy to say, okay, look, I'm gonna be out here, and we were in the middle of nowhere, and I would at least
Yeah.
have somebody that, at minimum, can give me haircuts.
And that's
At the
for
time,
real.
I had hair, you know what I'm saying?
And
And
once a
I
week.
said, man, nothing else, man. Mario will be my barber. Nah, but
But
you were like, real talk, man. I'm saying were not because I think you've lost anything, but I'm speaking to that time. I'm speaking from the aspect of that time. But you were just dope at Bible word, bro. You was just like dumb organized. we were joking about this before we came on. Like you had software, like at the time, like we don't even realize, man. It seemed like it was forever ago because we didn't have internet. You know what I mean? Like so, we had like these. We would bring out these programs for how to map out our territories and stuff. You know what I mean? Like you was just that dude, man. You were that dude. And again, just for clarity, I'm not saying you were because I think you lost anything. I'm just saying you were because in that time we all were like those of us we were real. It was about eight or 10 of us, real tight, man. And we were like, Mario has this thing figured out.
Still trying to figure out. but man, we had some good times there in Virginia for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, it was for 4 months. But remember, I left and I got a call back to the West Coast, but you stayed.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened after that, man? While you stayed, and tell us a little bit more about that, that part.
So I stayed out there for a little while in Virginia, but I got an opportunity in another part of the East Coast to work with another ministry, and went to work with that other ministry for about a year or so. From there, got a call to work with a church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Worked there for about a year, and ultimately, man, through a series of some fortunate, some unfortunate events, God led me to Oakwood University. And again, it's similar to what I said on the front end about how my rap career was kind of faltering. And at the time, you don't know that God's hand is in it, but your personality and your behavior is creating circumstances that ultimately lead you into the next phase or season that God has for you. And I think that was the case in my entire time on the East Coast, that there were, good and bad situations that occurred that led me from one assignment to the next assignment to the next assignment, and eventually landed me at Oakwood University, where I studied theology for 3 years. Eventually graduated actually with a degree in church leadership, and then went into full-time pastoral ministries in the Allegheny East Conference. And so, man, we left California together. We actually drove together, me, you, and my middle son, drove out there together, worked, man. Actually, the church we worked at when we got there, I think you and I were the only people, only people of color. You know what I mean? By the time we left, they had more people of color because that's what they asked us to do. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think we did a very good job there. And like you said, you received a call to come back home. I received a call to a new assignment, and then subsequent assignments that led me. All roads were leading to Oakwood University.
Yeah, man. So you went to Oakwood, you graduated, and then you said you were working where at again?
So Allegheny East Conference,
Allegheny East.
which is the territory of Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, DC, and a little bit of West Virginia. So it was, that's the territory. And I was working at a church called Metropolitan SDA Church, Seventh-day Adventist Church in Hyattsville, Maryland. And I was there for about 5 years. Yep.
Okay. So how was the experience there? Was it good?
So it was dope, man. It was dope, man. The Lord blessed like crazy, but it was not indicative of what I was going to experience the rest of my ministry. It was kid in a candy store. Even though in the time I could remember, some challenges, but we had resources. We had resources in terms of financial resources, human capital, and my senior pastor allowed me to cast a vision as well as execute that vision. And it shot us, it put us on the map in a way. About us, I mean how God was moving me. It put me on a map in a way that changed my ministry and changed what we would call my ministerial profile. But it was good times. It was good times. We ran several events. Even before I graduated Oakwood, I ran an evangelistic series that I did some stuff that, and it's funny that me, you, and our mutual friend, Jeff Tatarchuk, we had dreamed about doing these things that we learned when we were at that organization I referred to earlier. And I got to implement some of that stuff, man. And the payoff was enormous. I mean, the first 4 months I was there, we baptized. Even, when I went, before I got to Oakwood, before I left Oakwood in my junior year, I ran a meeting in Ohio and baptized 110 people. And so people were like, yo, who is this cat? Right. From there, when I got to Hyattsville, to the church, I got installed on June 4th of 2011. September 10th of 2011, I ran a meeting. We baptized 134 people, right? Using these things that over the years, I've been collecting these ideas and this information and this approach to ministry that I finally got to implement. And it was, the Lord blessed. And so during my time there, we were, the number one baptizing church in the conference. Tithe was growing steadily. The young adults were engaged. And then that got me, on North American Division committees. I then became the face of the North American Division for the 2015 report to the General Conference. I ran the young adult program Impact San Antonio with my friend Ben Lundquist and Lavina Seawright. Man, it just really raised my ministerial profile tremendously. But those were some good times. I was able to, like, again, talking about you, man. There were some things I was able to do in terms of our web presence and innovation and creativity, where we launched an app, redid the website in a way that at the time there was a churchy looking website. I deviated entirely from that, did something all brand new. And these things just really put me, if you will, on the map in the regional work, man, and just, again, changed my ministerial profile ridiculously.
Nice, man. So you had a good time there doing ministry at Metro, right? That was Metro. But
Mm-hmm.
then you got a call to another church. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So after 5 years, the way it works is, you come in as an intern, you're a senior pastor, and that church sees you to ordination. So God ordained, and the Lord blessed, man. I had a vision in Allegheny East for a particular area, and had researched that area, really fell in love with that area. And one day my president was asking me, hey, man, where do you see your ministry? And so I laid out a couple of scenarios. And one of the scenarios that I laid out was that church in Philadelphia. And he was like, really? And so, we had a conversation, and a couple of years later, or a year or so later, he called me and said, look, man, I really want to recommend you to that post. And I was like, dope, you know what I mean? So I got assigned after being at Metro for 5 years, because, again, I got installed. This is we're in 2020 today. I got installed in 2011, spent 5 years there. In 2016, I was pastoring the largest church in Philadelphia, the North Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church, which we affectionately refer to as the North Church. Was there, man, was doing some great things, some community services. I did 2 Amen clinics where we were able to give free dental and vision care, partnered with my local senator, my city council, sat on the sheriff's faith-based board. We just did a lot of urban inner city stuff, man. And again, the profile continued to raise. We brought in Dr. Carlton Bird at the Breath of Life Television Ministries, and the city hadn't had an evangelistic series of that magnitude in several years. Wow. And so it was just a fantastic thing. We ended up baptizing close to 100 people. We did 80. And, man, it was just dope. It was dope as well. It came with some challenges, again, and it's funny as I share this, trying to be completely honest and as transparent as possible. You see God trying to work some flaws and some things out of you. And so there were some approaches, because, again, I think when the Bible talks about in Ephesians 4 and 1 Corinthians 12, gifts, I think I'm a gifted, persuasive speaker, which makes me a good evangelist. But there is a modality and a mindset that comes with working with an evangelist. A friend of mine, Dr. Abraham Jules, pastors in Northeastern Conference on the East Coast. And he says, church is a democracy. Evangelism is a dictatorship. And sometimes, man, it's best that an evangelist come into a church and leave. There's a particular temperament, and I think Carlton Bird has this temperament that I just thoroughly enjoy, his ability to be both and, not either or. But I really feel like I'm more of an evangelist than I am a pastor. Not that I didn't do the job relatively well, but it's just not my gifting, and it required a little bit more sacrifice on my part. Then I think at that stage in my ministry, and for me to be the most effective, I was able and willing to give. And so yeah, man, it was a dope. I was there for 3 years, and in the 3 years, again, the Lord blessed us with the way I approached ministry was a little bit different from when I was at Metro. Whereas I had learned something very important at Metro that I didn't want to repeat at North. And so I really tried to gain the support of the community, because I was in a very urban community. Of course, Philadelphia is the 5th largest city in the nation, has the 4th largest concentration of African Americans, which was right up my alley. And so really made some dope partnerships. I mean, we got on Fox TV, we were on, and I'm not talking about like, Pan. I mean, like we were featured on a local talk show there, national, statewide, citywide talk show there. Like I said, worked with my senator twice to do these clinics, worked with my city council, sheriff, commissioner of the police department, commissioner of the fire department, really made some dope inroads there that I think was a learning experience I think where God knew he was going to take me right after that assignment. So we spent 5 years at Metro, 3 years at North, and then God called us to where we are now.
Okay, man, you brought up a good point, because ministry is challenging.
Absolutely.
And we will always face obstacles in ministry. And ever since we've known each other, we've been in ministry, and we even go back and forth and dialogue about that, the troubles and the challenges. But I think you're right. The point that you brought up is God is not only, allowing these challenges to come our way for no reason, but to work on us, to really work on our character, and to kind of change our mindset, man, because now look what you've done. All the way from South Central Los Angeles, right, where the Lord brought you, all the way to the East Coast, doing your thing, and even despite the challenges, still allowing success in that ministry. So it's a beautiful thing, man, that the Lord, what the Lord is doing in your ministry. So now you said, oh, go ahead.
I want to say this though, Pastor.
Yes.
It speaks to the fact that it's not you. Right. So it's easy for us. It's easy for us to be like, yo, I preach so well, or I do such great graphic art, or whatever it is. And it's like, nah, if it was you, you would have been back in South Central California a long, long time ago. But it's like the Lord is ultimately working his plan, right? He's working his will for your life. And so when you are, you could be doing everything in the world to crash and burn a ministry, but the Lord is like, it reminds me of when Jesus told the disciples, hey, go over to that town. There's a donkey tied up that I'm going to need. Yo, go get that, and it's like,
for me.
Yeah, the Lord is like, yo, you are a donkey tied to some bad behavior, but I have need of you. You know what I mean? And so, man, yeah, it is an indicator, a clear indicator, a true indicator that no matter what successes we have, it is not us. Lord, have mercy. Thank you, God. It is not us. It is not dependent upon us. The Lord just says, hey, submit, surrender, and watch what I do through you.
For sure, man. And so, man, now tell us again where you're at now today and what you're doing.
So again, coming out of Oakwood in 2011, going to Metro where I was at for 5 years, then going to North where I was the senior pastor for 3 years. Then I received a call at the end of close to the end of 2018. I received a call about something out here that I was like, no. The Bible says the prophet is not without honor save in his own country. I'm like, I'm not going back to California. You know what I'm saying? That's for LL Cool J and Biggie Smalls. Me, I'm staying on the East Coast. and the call was persistent. The person that was reaching out was persistent. My vice president here in Southeastern California Conference was very persistent. And one of the things that he did that really it sold me on it was, we want you to be evangelists and community services. And I was like, what? Because what I had done in my ministry, at Metro and at North was a blend of the two. It wasn't just the public evangelistic series. It was the way we approached getting ready for the public meeting, which was to become very incarnational in our communities and really not be a church to or for or in a community, but to be church with community. And so when the opportunity was to head up for the entire Southeastern California Conference, their community services department, I was like, oh, that's dope, as well as the conference evangelist for Black Ministries department. And I was like, yo, this is good. But my wife is a long-term East Coast girl. She only lived the only time she didn't live on the East Coast was when she was in Huntsville, Alabama at Oakwood University. And so I told the guy, I said, look, you got to convince her, and I'm not going to help, because when we moved to North, because I had a vision for North, she followed me there, and I didn't want to put her in a situation, which is the case a lot of times in Adventism, because we're part of the Adventist movement, whereas the conference and the administration sees fit, they move you around. And I didn't want to submit her to that. And so I told him, I said, look, man, if you want me to come, I'm down, but you got to convince my wife, and I'm not going to help you. And so he flew me out to do their camp meeting out here. And, he spent the majority of the time, and a couple of the pastors in this conference spent the majority of their time convincing my wife. And Pastor Navarro, the dope thing is, do you know who it was that convinced her to come out here?
Who that?
Take a wild guess.
Man, I can't even.
No, you can, and that's why I'm asking you, because we have a mutual friend.
Jeff.
Yeah. It was my wife. It was Jeff Tatarchuk that finally won her over for her to come. So after we was out here, I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I ain't saying nothing to her. I'm not going to go back to her and try to say anything or ask her anything. And a couple of weeks after we were back from doing the camp meeting, she was like, I wonder what houses cost out there. And I was like, everybody has those stories, and until you get your own, you always think everybody's lying. Mm-hmm. But literally, man, I was like, he reached out to me, like, yo, it's been a week or so. I said, man, I'm not talking to her. I ain't saying nothing to her. And so he reached out. So again, she starts talking about that, and I'm just like, oh wow, yeah. Well, let's look at houses. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what. And he called one day, and he said, hey man, so what's she thinking? I said, I don't know. He said, well, look, to be appropriate, I have to reach out to your conference and tell them we're interested and we want to extend you a call. What you think? I said, hold on. And I didn't put him on mute. I said, babe, Southeastern wants to reach out to the conference and ask if we can come. Is that all right with you? And she said, yeah. Wow. And so again, so now I am. So look, I said earlier, to give you the abbreviated version of what I do, I am the director of prison ministries, men's ministries, and Adventist community services for the entire Southeastern California Conference. And I am the evangelist for the Black Ministries department of the Southeastern California Conference. Nice. And so, man, it is really in my wheelhouse. This is what I feel like. Again, I don't have regular pastoral duties that I have to do. I get to plan, conceptualize, ideate, and execute evangelism in ways to help the community. And COVID-19 presented a perfect opportunity for me to, as community services director, help my churches help their communities. And so it is, I just got here in January, February, and we had barely been here for a couple of weeks before COVID hit, which also kind of squeezed me into a season of creativity and innovation. And we first had to take a couple steps back, do some things that we know will work, and so that we can make some strides and steps forward. But yeah, man, got here in this year, and we've been here now about 6-7 months. And COVID-19 has presented a set of challenges none of us was ready for. But it also has given us the opportunity to rediscover our creative edge with things like what we're doing now. You're in Nevada, I'm in California, but yet here we are talking about this. And I've been able to, while I serve in those capacities, I am not stressed or strapped for preaching engagements, because this medium that we're now utilizing, the internet, allows me to be all across. Next week, I'm preaching in London. You know what I'm saying? Right from here. If anybody's watching and sees me next week, you're gonna see this exact same background, but I'm gonna be in London. In September, I'll be in South Africa. You know what I mean? You'll see this exact same background, but I'll be in South Africa. And so this is a great opportunity and a wonderful season for innovative ministry. But I think that what we really are going to be blessed by is when we stop just being innovative and start being creative. This is a lot of dope innovation, but I think there is a thin line that people don't recognize between innovation and creation. And once we cross over into that creative space, I think the work is going to be better for it.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. That's the next step for all of us, in ministry, is to get to that point because, we see all the signs around us, man. Jesus, he's coming soon.
You're not playing. I mean, I'm not the fear mongerer, and
No, no, not at all.
I don't like preaching to or from the headlines necessarily, because then you make a statement that if we should exist and be here 10 years from now, people are like, but didn't you say?
Yeah,
But God, if ever there was looking like something mark of the beast or American prophecy finally becoming, is let this man get a second turn. Doctor, you're gonna see me on here, right? Talk about, look, this is the end of the world. You better get to you know what I mean. And I ain't gonna play with it, Doc. If Mr. Trump gets back in office, Doctor, you're gonna see me on here in a 5-piece suit with a bow tie on, thumping the Bible, telling people get your house in order. Because I mean that we are seeing right now, again, with COVID-19, the civil unrest, some of the things that we see happening, a lot of stuff that we see happening both globally and locally.
yes.
Man, I mean, the last time I think I saw something this troublesome and this I mean, just frightening was Y2K, Doc. You know what I mean? And during Y2K, a lot of people got saved. You hear me? But it was there were some very stressful times, and we were able to look in the Bible and say, man, if it was ever going to be a time, this is it. But even in comparison to Y2K, Doc,
It's definitely it's a wake up call, if nothing else.
If nothing else, and I mean, and it's not one of those, hey babe, it's the
sound the alarm for.
It's somebody jumping up. It's like we got kids, man. It's the kids jumping up. Daddy, what's up? This is not a game, man. This right here is not a game. And I'm not saying that I don't preach to the headlines. I don't do sensationalism. There was a time in my ministry where I thought that was advantageous, but I just try to be realistic. I try to always lean on the gospel. I try to lean on the Bible. But Doc, what we seeing right now, if I'm telling you, the man can put more people on the Supreme Court. If this I always forget her name because she got 3 names, but this one Supreme Court justice that keeps getting sick, that keeps us democratic and keeps us republic, although we lose no ground in terms of being capitalistic, but keeps us democratic. Doc, if this man can put some more people in office, pardon some craziness, speak more craziness, and then end up with a second term, Doc, you come out of her, my people.
Yeah. Well, Marquis, man, I want to just say thank you for joining us and sharing your testimony, man. I want you to leave us, though, with 2 things. One, is there any social media that you want to get out there or where people can, get at you?
Well, yeah, you can follow me on @Dr. Johns on Instagram and Twitter, and Marquis D. Johns on Facebook. But my social media platform is one where I am definitely speaking realistically to the times in terms of go vote. You can follow me on @Dr. Johns on Twitter and Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook through Pastor Navarro or somebody like that.
Okay. And then last one, what is your favorite Bible text and what does it mean to you?
So there was a time, I think, I used to lean on 2 Timothy 2:15, which was a great text. But there came this season in my ministry where there was this obvious and visible transition. People who I once aligned myself with, the Lord began to pull me in another direction. And then I happened across a text in the book of Acts 24:14. where Paul is speaking, and he makes this audacious claim. And he says, after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers, believing all things written in the law and the prophets. And when you really look at what he says there, it's challenging on so many levels, because people viewed Paul, particularly Jews, as an apostate. And what he was doing was affirming and reaffirming that he still believed everything written in the Old Testament, but he had had an experience with Christ that while they viewed it as heresy, this was the way forward. And that, to me, man, in my bio, I always talk about using a liberal methodology to present a conservative theology. And because of my presentation, because of who I feel I'm called to, and the same way how in the book of Acts, they say, hey, Peter, you're going to go to the Jews. Paul is going to go to the Gentiles. And I believe that there is room for us to know that God is calling us to a particular and specific people group, and then to allow our ministry to take on the form necessary to reach that group. As a matter of fact, Ellen White says as much in the book Evangelism in page 105, 106. She says, let the people that you're trying to reach determine the method you'll use to reach them. And so for me, some people look at where I'm at and they call it liberal or progressive or even apostasy or heresy. But I declare and decree that after the way which you call heresy, so worship I the God of the Bible, believing everything written in the Bible and spirit of prophecy. And so that's what that text means to me. That is my text that I hold on to, because every now and then I go, Lord, you sure this is what you want me to do? And I hear that reverberate in my spirit is after the way which they will call heresy. You keep doing what I tell you to do. People won't understand it because God's thoughts are not your thoughts. And I'm not beholden to man. I am beholden to the call on my life from God. And so many people will question what I do. Many people won't agree with it. People won't like it. But they didn't like Jesus. They didn't like Paul. All I have to do is be faithful, first and foremost to God, second to my family, and third to myself. And so, after the way, Acts 24:14, after the way which they call heresy, so worship I, the God of my fathers, believing all things written in the law and the prophets. That's my verse.
Amen. Amen. That's good explanation. Well, again, Marquis, I thank you, man, for joining us and sharing with us your testimony. I just want to wish blessings to you and your family as you
Thank
guys
you, Lord.
continue. Yes, thank you. Ministry there in California. God bless, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity, Pastor Navarro. And again, to you and Cass and the family, man, God bless you. God keep you, and love you guys dearly. But thank you for this opportunity to share with your audience. God bless you, Cutting Edge.
Well, I hope you were blessed by that testimony. If you were, please give it a thumbs up and share this blessing with others, with your family and your friends. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified of upcoming videos. And again, if you have any Bible questions, or if you have any comments, or if you have any prayer requests, go ahead and put that in the comment section as well. Well, until next time, my name is Mario Navarro Jr., and here at The Cutting Edge, our mission is to inspire you to study, understand, and apply God's Word into your life. Grace and peace.
The Cutting Edge.